actually a Trump supporter. I think that he will make a difference, and he's not a politician, so he's actually quite similar to Reagan, who was an actor. So I think we need someone who is not a politician, because there's a lot of issues with corruption with our politicians, and I think he will bring us away from that within our government.
I guess came down to who I felt would carry Obama's legacy the best.
Voted for Cruz. I wasn't a fan of any of the candidates, particularly in the Republican Party, but since you have to stick with your party for the primaries, I thought he was the best bet to get the vote away from Trump.
He can be a positive change for our country. There's a lot of negativity in this country, and he can turn it around and make everyone more equal.
Kasich seems like he has some pretty traditional Republican values. It seems the most steady of all the candidates.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to a special report, Decision 2016. I'm Kathryn Robinson alongside Hunter Saenz. We have a lot to discuss tonight as the New York primary matters now more than ever.
That's right, Kathryn. Frontrunners on both sides have just clinched a victory. Polls closed just 45 minutes ago, and now results are in. Now, for those results, let's send it over to CitrusTV reporter Josh Bazan. What's the latest, Josh?
Hunter, we just were able to confirm that Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State and New York Senator, has just clinched the New York primary for the Democratic Party. With 32% of the votes reporting, Clinton has a massive lead, 61% to Bernie Sanders' 38%. That's a 23-point lead. This is a big victory for Clinton. She really needed to make sure she won her home state. And for Bernie Sanders, it's a little bit of a disappointment. He was hoping to at least make it closer. We'll see how the rest of the results come in. We're still waiting for some of the results downstate, where a lot of the Democrats are reporting. As for the Republican side, home state, Donald Trump, a Manhattan businessman, also able to clinch. We were able to tell you that shortly after 9 o'clock when the polls closed. For Donald Trump, 13% of the votes are reported, but he has a huge lead. 65% of the Republican votes are going to Donald Trump, and only 21% to Kasich, even less, 13% for Ted Cruz. That's the latest of the results. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, both able to clinch victories in New York State.
All right, Josh, thanks so much. Joining us now is Talking Points moderator Alex Amico and also Citrus TV News anchor and reporter Max Darrow. Thank you so much for being here, guys. As he said, these polls closed at 9 o'clock, and minutes later, Trump is projected the winner. What does this mean for his campaign?
Well, Trump is in probably the best position of any other candidate. Mathematically, he's really the only one who has a chance to win outright before a contested convention. He needs to win, after New York, he needs to win 52% of the remaining delegates, assuming he wins every delegate in New York, where Ted Cruz needs to win 82, and John Kasich mathematically cannot win before the convention. So it's a big step for Donald Trump. There's still a long road ahead, though.
And the polls did predict Trump and Clinton to win tonight. That being said, this will really cement their status as the front runners in both parties. New York is actually playing a huge role for the first time since 1992 in the primaries, actually.
1992 was when Bill Clinton managed to hold off California Governor Jerry Brown in the primaries, and Ted Cruz looks like he's going to finish a distant third in this race. He is not a popular guy in New York. He had that infamous New York values comment in one of the debates back in the winter. Actually, New York Congressman Peter King, who represents the South Shore of Long Island today, said, "I am not endorsing Ted Cruz. I hate Ted Cruz, and if he got the nomination, I would probably take cyanide." So Ted Cruz is not a very popular guy in New York.
And we do keep hearing about why this primary matters so much more this year. Can you all break it down for us why it does matter so much?
Well, as Alex mentioned earlier, this is a big step for both candidates. Though Donald Trump still has the possibility of going to a contested convention, he still also now has the possibility of mathematically taking the nomination, foregoing a contested convention, as Ted Cruz is actually campaigning for. His entire campaign has really shifted from a bid for the nomination. It has gone now to, what can I do to force a contested convention so Donald Trump does not win?
Right, and a big thing for Trump is that the next 2 weeks are very favorable to him. Every state in the next few weeks are northeastern and mid-Atlantic states, which so far in this election have gone very well for him. The big ones to look at are Pennsylvania and Maryland. They're both winner-take-all states. Pennsylvania is going to have 71 states delegates up for grabs. Maryland is 38. Trump's up by double digits in both. So if he wins both of those states, after winning New York, if he wins all the delegates in New York, he'll come away with 960 delegates, which gets him that much closer to the nomination. Afterwards, the next big primary to look at is May 3rd in Indiana, where there are 57 winner-take-all delegates up for grabs. There's no polls yet so far in Indiana, so we can't really predict what's going to happen in there. But the truth is, we probably will not be able to tell who the nominee is going to be. If Trump does manage to take this before the convention, he probably won't be able to do it until the California primary on the last day of voting.
And just a note with Trump winning New York, he could get 81 if he wins 50% of the vote or more in all 27 congressional districts. However, if he actually wins the popular vote tonight as well, he's going to get all 95 delegates tonight, and that would be a huge win for Donald.
Now, as far as John Kasich, it just surprises me that he's still in this race. Obviously, he's pushing for a contested convention, but do you see him staying after tonight?
Yeah, I think that John Kasich will probably stay after tonight. Usually when candidates drop out, it's one, they don't see a reasonable path to victory, or two, they don't have enough money. John Kasich so far doesn't have really much of a problem with money, and his thing with path to victory, he doesn't have a path to victory before the convention, and in all likelihood he doesn't have one at the convention. But the thing with John Kasich is we don't know. His voters are probably more likely to go to Trump than go to Cruz were he to drop out. Basically, they're more moderate voters, which they might not like Trump, but they really don't like Cruz's ideology. So I think that Kasich probably thinks that the threat of him dropping out and essentially handing the nomination to Trump is too great for him to drop out right now.
And then as far as Sanders goes, if Hillary Clinton takes a majority of these delegates here, where do you see his campaign going?
Well, again, with the money issue, Bernie Sanders can stay in as long as he wants. He's broken every fundraising record that there is. But frankly, it's going to be very difficult because for the Republicans, it's been easier for Trump to run up these big margins because there's a lot of winner-take-all states. No Democratic state is winner-take-all. They're all proportional. So Bernie Sanders' problem is he doesn't just need to start winning states. He needs to start winning big states by big margins. And if he wasn't able to do it tonight, it's hard to see a scenario in the next few weeks where he will be able to.
And he needs to do this to be able to also pick up support from the people who haven't made up their minds yet. Yeah. Because Sanders, if he can win New York, which he hasn't, this will then help him make his case to say that he is really an electable candidate who has a shot at the nomination. But if he can't do this, and he has to really, like Alex said, win big in big states, people aren't going to be able to hop on the train. So,
thanks so much, guys. We will be back with you all after the break for more discussion on this. And coming up after the break, we will see what does this mean for the Trump campaign and his opponents tonight.
Plus, our team is live in New York City as our special report, Decision 2016, continues.
If you want to be a parent, it doesn't matter how you play, what you wear, how you dance, or even what direction life takes you. You just need to be there. You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care don't need perfection. They just need you.
Looks like it's done.
Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. You can't see these microbes, but they might be there. So learn the right temperature to cook each type of meat. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov.
I'm a teacher. Let me tell you what I make. I make learning a privilege, not a chore. And frustration, a tool, not an obstacle. I make working hard seem easy and giving up impossible. I make an old subject feel like a fresh thought and unconventional methods common. I'm a teacher. I make more.
It was a great honor, really. Who would have thought? This was just a great honor, and I think it's a great honor for New York. New York is a special place, so we're going to make America great again. Thank you very much.
that was frontrunner Donald Trump earlier today when he casted his vote here in New York, and a reporter asked him actually, who are you voting for? And he sat there and said, oh, it's an easy decision. He didn't answer directly, but he did say it was an easy decision. As we all know, it probably was for himself, as it is for every candidate, hopefully. Back at the desk is Max Darrow and Alex Amico. Let's really break it down on this GOP side. Donald Trump wins here in New York. We've already talked about his opponents. Both of you actually were inside his rally when he was here in Syracuse. What was the atmosphere like? He has tapped into something this year.
Something I think that's very important to note is, as we mentioned, the idea of an open convention I think is relatively scary to Donald Trump because it is no longer, it doesn't matter if he's in first because a lot of people obviously don't want him to win the nomination. At his press rally, excuse me, his rally at the On Center, he actually, for the first time, really was asking for your vote, for the people of New York's vote. It was actually a very different change of pace. I know Alex and I were actually standing together for a lot of it.
Right.
And something that jumped out at me is he said, I don't want anything, I don't want any money, I want your vote. I need your vote. So on Tuesday, we're going to go to the polls. Tell your parents, tell your friends, tell your buddies, to everybody, and get them to go to the polls because we need your votes. And I think this was a huge change of pace for Donald.
It
so
really
far.
was. A lot of his speeches, you see him saying, I'm winning by a lot, I'm going to run away with it, but this was the first time he actually was asking for people's vote that I saw, which was definitely a change. And what Max said about the contested convention is absolutely right, because in the actual delegate selection process, most of the delegates are bound, almost all the delegates are bound to the candidate that won those delegates on the first ballot, and most of them, a lot of them are bound on the first ballot only. Ted Cruz has been doing a very good job organizing and recruiting delegates who might be sympathetic to switch on the second ballot. So I think Donald Trump knows that for him to win this nomination, it's first ballot or bust. But the atmosphere inside of that rally, I can honestly say it was like nothing I've ever experienced. I talked to about 30 Trump voters on the floor when I was walking around before it started. One of the most common things I heard, Syracuse is the northeastern industrial city that's been hit pretty hard by the changing economy, and that was one of the biggest things that they talked about. There was one of three issues that I heard. It was trade, it was our jobs, or it was our voices of being heard. And those are really the people that Trump is tapping into. And those are also, coincidentally, people that are living in the states that are coming up in the next 2 weeks.
And something that he also did very well, I would argue, is that he really localized what he had to say. He started his entire speech with a piece of paper that gave specific statistics about Carrier Corporation, as we all know, the Carrier Dome, named after Carrier, one of the biggest older corporations that used to be here in Syracuse, and he even talked about he won't buy their products anymore because they're shipping their jobs off elsewhere and they're no longer bringing jobs in the area. So I think something huge, as Alex just mentioned too, is that he really talked about unifying people with jobs, and in Syracuse, it's an extremely important thing. So he's tapped into a very, very specific niche audience.
And I think we've seen at a lot of Donald Trump's rallies getting really heated. And I was at Hillary Clinton's rally. There were some protesters outside there. Did you see protesters outside Donald Trump's rally? And what was the atmosphere like with that?
It got interrupted inside about 5 times for protests. The funny thing was, before Donald Trump started, from what I saw, before Donald Trump started speaking, it was a really optimistic atmosphere. Everyone I talked to, I was expecting a negative reception given what I had seen some members of the media be treated by Trump supporters. Never saw that. Incredibly nice people, really eager to talk to me, really hopeful atmosphere. And then when Trump started talking, it was like a switch got flipped. And it wasn't that they were hopeful for a better future, it was that they were angry at the people that put them in the position they were today. So it was kind of eerie to watch, but the man certainly knows how to work a crowd.
And the protesters inside, I think there was 5 interruptions, 3 got thrown out. They were escorted out very easily. There wasn't really a sense of violence. I know we've seen that in other Trump protests. That being said, outside, I know there was a student march from Syracuse University that probably had 50 students march from the Syracuse University campus all the way down to the On Center. That's about a mile. And they were chanting outside, signs, having things from his face on photoshopped onto dictators' faces, symbols, words, stuff I don't even feel comfortable saying on air because of the nature of the protesting. So.
Now, you say he was uniting as far as unifying local people here with the topic on jobs and what state our country is in now, but that's not how Donald Trump has been in the past. I mean, he unites people on the issues, and for his fans, yes, but there's been some big controversial things that he has said and he has done and called on inside those rallies. Was that here in Syracuse?
I think the big thing to note here is actually the majority of the people inside the rally were people from Syracuse and Central New York. It wasn't a student majority. Outside, the majority of the protesters were actually students. And I think that's something serious to note, is because Trump tapped into the people of Central New York. The students of Syracuse University and the other local colleges, those were really the people who made up the protests. And as we know, a lot of students come from all over the place. Syracuse is a hub for students from the Northeast. I'm from California, I'm out here. You're from Texas. Everybody comes from all over the place to Syracuse. He tapped into the people of Syracuse, and that's a big difference.
And in terms of Trump being a unifier, I think that you have to give him credit for this. I don't think we have seen a presidential candidate who's been able to assemble a coalition like this in a long time. I mean, you look at it, he's won New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, Michigan, and Alabama, Mississippi. That's about as diverse a collection of states as you can get.
Yep.
Well, thanks so much, guys. We'll be back with you a little bit later. And several candidates visited New York City leading up to tonight. Citrus TV's Amico Osumi has been following the races down the Big Apple and joins us now by phone. So, Amica, I wonder if you could set the scene down there for us today. You were at some polling sites, and what were New Yorkers saying? We will try to get her back on the phone in a little bit. Okay, I think we're having a few technical errors with Amica's phone call. She's been in New York City for the past few days and was at polling sites today hearing what voters had to say down there in the Big Apple. There were actually reports of issues in Brooklyn that she was hopefully going to be able to tell us about, if not a little later.
Yeah, that's right. And we're going to take a quick break right here. But when we come back, what tonight means for the Sanders campaign. And as well, we'll discuss the delegates. We'll give an update on the count. It's all right after the break.
I'm an A average student, and I'm an athlete working towards a scholarship. And everybody tells me how much potential I have. But I just wish someone would tell me where my next meal is coming from. Katie, how'd I do?
Do you have to be so serious?
Well, I mean, I did like a crazy dance in a movie. If you want me to, do a little, no.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
If you want to be a parent, it doesn't matter how you play or even what you wear. You just need to be there. Thousands of teens in foster care don't need perfection. They just need you.
This has been a joy during the last 2 weeks to be here all over the state.
That was Clinton you heard talking, especially after her big win tonight. And we have Amico Osumi back on the phone. She has been in New York City following the races. And Amica, could you set the scene down there for us? You were at polling sites today, and what were New Yorkers saying?
Well, New Yorkers, actually, some of the ones that we were talking to were actually all voting for Bernie. So it's a little funny how the voting has turned out tonight. But the coordinator there at the polling site we were at in Midtown said that the turnout is a lot greater than the last primary in New York. She said probably just because this primary is so much more important than the New York primary traditionally usually is.
And I've touched on this earlier. We've been hearing of reports of issues in Brooklyn at a polling site. What have you been hearing down there?
Yeah, so apparently about over 125,000 registered Democrats, their names got pulled from the rolls, so they weren't able to vote. But the Board of Elections Executive Director Michael Ryan has been quoted saying that those voters were taken off for maintenance reasons. A lot of them were taken off because they hadn't voted in two of the last presidential elections, so they were kind of taken off. And others were taken off because they moved out of the borough. But an audit is supposed to be taken to see if anything was done wrong there. Those voters should have been able to vote.
And with this New York primary mattering now more than ever, what are the stakes tonight?
Well, the stakes tonight, obviously, there's projected winners on both sides, but on the Republican side especially, the stakes are whether Kasich and Cruz can steal some of the delegates from Trump. Obviously, he's a winner, but when it comes down to the individual districts within the state, if Kasich can get over 20% and Trump gets less than 50 in some of these districts, Kasich can steal one of the 3 delegates that are awarded in each district. And it's hard to say now, but Kasich's strategy, it seems like, is to try to win these delegates in upstate areas rather than in the city where Trump's hometown is.
And New Yorkers had to register back in October to vote in this primary. Does that hurt any of the candidates?
Well, if they wanted to, if they were independent voters or wanted to switch parties, it was back in October. If they were new voters, it was in March. And it could have hurt a lot of people, especially on Bernie's campaign. He relies a lot on the millennial vote. And if those millennials weren't dedicated Democratic voters back in October and didn't switch, where he could have lost a lot of voters that wanted to vote today but realized it was just too late.
Thank you so much, Amico, for joining us.
All right, and joining us now, Josh Bazan is in addition to the desk right now, alongside Max Darrow and Alex Amico. Let's talk about this Democratic side. Hillary Clinton wins here, big victory for her. It was getting to become closer than she expected leading into tonight. As far as the future of her campaign, do we think she can wrap it up?
Yeah, I think that first of all, Bernie Sanders has outperformed any expectations that anyone had when he started to run. I think most people thought he would be gone by Super Tuesday, but he's managed to defy all odds. But I do think that Hillary Clinton is going to be able to wrap this up fairly soon. Whether Bernie Sanders drops out or not is a separate issue. But I do think she's at, before New York, she's at 1,758 delegates. That is including super delegates, which is only about 500, 600 short of the magic number of 2,383. So in the next few weeks, she will definitely have an opportunity to wrap this nomination up.
And we can't downplay Bernie Sanders in this, though. This is a huge loss for him.
Yeah.
I mean, since March 30th, he's narrowed the gap from 30 points to 10. And it's an incredible.
Earlier today, when he was caught on the street by a couple of cameramen, he was asked the question, "How is Hillary going to feel tonight?" And he said something along the lines of, "She's going to be upset." But that's not the case tonight. You have the delegate count, don't you, Josh?
I have the delegate count coming into the night.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders is pretty far behind, as you said, with the super delegates, and that's what really matters. It doesn't seem like in these next few contests he's going to be able to make up that ground that he's lost. When it comes to superdelegates, Hillary Clinton has 469 pledged superdelegates. Bernie Sanders only has 31 coming in tonight, and that's really the big difference.
So what do you?
No, go ahead, Kathryn.
What do you think his strategy needs to be moving forward past tonight?
I think his strategy is to get as close as he can with those pledged delegates that have to follow what the voters say, and if he can beat Hillary Clinton, which it seems would be very, very tough for him to do, perhaps he can sway the party to reconsider those superdelegates, but that really seems unlikely at this point.
And the theme of Bernie Sanders' campaign now is big victories in big important states.
Yeah.
That's really his only thing that he can do now.
Yeah, but talking about the system, I know that Bernie Sanders won in Wyoming, but Clinton came out with more delegates than he did. Alex, talk a little bit about how is this system fair to the people who voted? I mean, they go out there to the polls in Wyoming, to the polls here in New York. I mean, does their vote really matter? We express how it matters so much.
I think that the biggest criticism that's made in these elections is about the role of superdelegates, because, like we said, she has an almost insurmountable lead with superdelegates. Without superdelegates, she's only up by about 200 pledged delegates. But the thing with superdelegates is they aren't faceless party insiders necessarily. Every member of Congress is a superdelegate. Bernie Sanders is a superdelegate himself. Former presidents, former vice presidents. It's important to note they've never actually overturned the will of the voters. In 2008, very famously, many of them switched to Barack Obama when he was a senator running for president and helped put him over the top as the race got into its late stages. I think that there's certainly an argument to be made about superdelegates being a bit of an undemocratic institution, and we might see some changes made to the Democratic nominating process after this election. But I think it's equally important to note that the superdelegates, in all likelihood, would not support a candidate with fewer pledged delegates, because that would be political suicide for the party.
And politicians on both sides of the aisle, something that a lot of them seem to agree upon, is the idea that the superdelegate system is a little off. Donald Trump even mentioned it in his rally. Hate to bring it back to Trump again, but that's the fact of the matter. He said the Democratic system is more corrupt than the Republican system when it comes to the superdelegates and how they actually vote. So just another thing to keep your eye on is something that unifies both parties is their kind of distaste for the system.
And I know that Josh, on the Republican side, not to switch entirely, but do you have any of the numbers coming in tonight as far as delegates goes on the GOP side?
As for the GOP, it's been decided, it's been figured out that Donald Trump will win with more than 51% of the vote. That means that those at-large delegates are all his. It's 14 delegates that he's going to for sure take home tonight. The rest of them, it matters what happens in those congressional districts. So there's 27 districts. That's where the 81 other delegates in New York State will be decided. And if he wins with more than 51% in each of those districts, he'll take home all of those. But those races are a little bit closer, a little bit too close to call in a lot of cases.
And a lot were saying that Cruz had the opportunity to kind of really make a move forward the past couple of weeks, but obviously did not manage to do it tonight here in New York. What does he need to do moving forward?
I think moving forward, it's just what he's been sort of leaning towards these last few races. He wants to make it a contested convention. That's what he and Kasich are trying to do now. They have to keep Trump from that 1,237 delegates. If they can do that, when they get to that second ballot, if there is a second ballot at the convention, Cruz has a decent chance, but it's really tough to say what will happen.
Continue to run a more organized campaign than Donald Trump and force that convention. That's his best bet.
And then, I mean, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, of course, front runners even after tonight. Who do you see? I mean, obviously this is painting a clear picture come November. Who do you see facing off in November?
Well, I think that I do think that this will go to a contested convention. I do think that Ted Cruz will get it on the second ballot because of his superior organization. I think that the Republican Party is already seeing some kind of staggering numbers were Donald Trump to be their nominee. There was a poll that had him only losing Mississippi within the margin of error by 4 points, which is pretty much unheard of for a Democrat to be that close in Mississippi. In some swing states or close to swing states, North Carolina, Ohio, states like that, a full third of Republican voters have said that were Trump the nominee, they would either vote Democrat or seek a third party. So I don't envy the Republican Party chair right now, because this is a really, really difficult situation.
It's an election that none of us could have guessed would come out of the Obama administration. We knew that people were angry. That they're angry every election year, as it probably should go. People want a new administration, of course, after 8 years. As far as Sanders going, we don't think he's going to drop out after tonight. He is all about the political revolution. Going forward into the states, how big of a impact and how big of a pull can he have on those other states, especially targeting millennials?
Targeting millennials, I think he's tapped into something great, but unfortunately he's not doing well with minorities. And something that Sanders needs to be able to do is, he is so far left that it's harder for some of the Democrats to want to come to his side and see his side of the story, because it's in order to get the nomination, you have to be able to find the happy medium.
Mm-hmm.
And though Hillary Clinton is much more to the right than Sanders is, she is still closer to that happy medium to get the nomination. Obviously, if we're looking at Hillary's probably going to win the nomination. But in order for Sanders to even make a push for those big states, he's got to
start building.
He's got to build it. He's got to come a little bit towards Hillary.
All right, final question. We'll make our little round around here. Who do you think is facing off in November?
Hillary Cruz with a possible third party run by Trump.
All right.
I could not agree more. Hillary Cruz. I think Donald will make a third party run, though, because he won't get the Republican nomination.
So you think Cruz will get both of you?
Yeah, I think
the Republican nomination. Okay.
I'm not so quick to rule out Trump. He's surprised a lot of people so far. I think if he gets all 95 in New York, which is possible at this point, and he makes a push in these next couple of states, I think he might be able to seal it up before the convention.
Well, Alex, Max, Josh, thank you all for joining us so much. And that will wrap things up on tonight's special report. Thanks so much for joining us, and be sure to stay up to date on the latest news, including all things politics, by following us on Twitter and Facebook.
Also, we'll have a full recap on the New York primary tomorrow on Citrus TV live at 6 at Citrus TV News. For Josh Bazan, Max Darrow, Alex Amico, and Kathryn Robinson, I'm Hunter Saenz. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.